My name's Edward. I'll be leading up today's message since Pastor Sonia had to be out for other reasons. But good morning online community as well. But we're just going to be bringing forth the word today. She told me a couple months ago that I was going to be preaching today, and I was just kind of slowly but getting tidbits as the month was coming to an end of what I was going to be preaching today. It wasn't until literally last week where God kind of confirmed the direction of this message. But of course, as a good student, I waited to the last very day, and I did it all this morning. That's what we do. And yeah, there was a lot of work for this morning. So I'm following exactly Sonia's footprints. You know, I woke up early, thought I was going to beat everyone up, so I got up at 7, got my coffee already, sat down, and then you woke up. Yeah, so I was going from that point, and I got no. So it was basically spiritual work all morning, and got here right at the end of praise and worship, and here I am to preach, just like Sunday does it. So following in the good footsteps. So, good morning, guys. Now I've been told I have to go at least 40 minutes, so I'm gonna try my best. If I go to 2nd Chronicles and just list off a bunch of names, you guys know why. Yeah. But I just want to open up in prayer, guys, to get everything set up. I know a lot of our members are actually out this morning because they had some flu and pink eye kind of going around their household. So we're definitely going to lift up Kim and her family because I know a lot of them are still battling that and recovering. So like I said, we're just going to pray real quick, get us started here. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather this morning, Lord. We just pray be with each and every one of us, Lord. Like, you know the people who are here, Lord. You know who the people who are watching online, Lord. You know what everyone's going through and the trials and tribulations and the sickness, Lord, and just the stress of everything, Lord. And we just pray that, you go out to each and every one of us, Lord. We know you can meet us in our situations, Lord. And we know that, even there's a lot of people here this morning, Lord, they didn't come here just to hear me, Lord, but they came here to hear you and just experience you, Lord. We just pray that your Holy Spirit come in this room, Lord, that you'd be alive to each and every one of us, Lord, and that you would just meet us where we're at, Lord, and just kind of get us through whatever trial that we might be going through, Lord. And we just pray that the word would come alive today, Lord. You breathe the Logos word all over it, Lord. And we just pray your blessed holy name, Lord. Amen. Amen. All right, so the funny thing is I'm actually going to be preaching, at least starting in 1 Kings 15. And I literally came across this in my devotionals about a week ago, and it literally just shot me back right to high school my sophomore year. And it's funny how God will kind of do that to you sometimes. Like, you just immediately get a memory or a flashback when you read something or see something of just years prior, and you might have even forgotten you had that memory. And that's how I've been learning to be sensitive to those moments and stuff. But when I came across 1 Kings 15, it's a story about King Asa, and it literally brought me right back to high school, where I was at under a pastor. He wasn't a pastor, but his name was Brother Shaw. And he does an amazing Bible course where he literally went through all the kings of Israel and broke it down and just really kind of highlighted a lot of their stuff. And when it got to King Asa, he did a really good job at highlighting some points in his life. And it's just kind of funny because if you told Mr. Shaw I'd be preaching a message about something he taught me 20 years ago, he would probably be laughing because needless to say, I didn't have the best reputation in high school, which I'm sure a lot of us can attest to. We probably didn't have the best reputations, but God, this is where we're at. So I want to jump over to 1 Kings 15, verses 9 through 14. I'm reading out of King James Version this morning, too, just so you know. And it goes, and in the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, reigned Asa over Judah. And for 41 years he reigned over Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abisham. And Asa did which was right in the eyes of the Lord, and he did as David his father. And he took away the Sodomites out of the land, and he removed all the idols of his fathers had made. And also Maacah, his mother, even had her removed from being queen, because she had made an idol in a grove. And Asa destroyed her idols, and he burnt it to the brook of Kidron. But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with the Lord in all his days. And when we see this story, King Asa, it's funny when a lot of times they speak of the great kings of Israel and Judah and things like that. They usually just refer to David and Solomon, and to right, because most of the kings after them were not good in the sight of the Lord. But there were two good kings that were in part over Judah, which at this point was Israel broke into two different countries. this was the southern kingdom of Judah. And King Asa took over, and he was the first good king that Israel had since I guess I believe it's like his great great grandfather, which was King Solomon. And you see here that the high places, when it refers to, is like basically these Israel fell into idolatry, fell into Baal worship. They also worshipped the goddess Ashtoreth. They were into all just sorts of witchcraft and just very bad riotous living. And he was the first king that actually finally took back some of that land, and even to the point where he even put his own mother out of queenship and put her out of the temple because she was worshiping these idols and stuff. So today I wanted, but the thing I wanted to focus on is the very last verse where it talks about how he left the high places. He did not remove them, and it's kind of where I wanted to take this message today. I mean, the message is going to be called "Tearing Down of the High Places," and I also probably going to be pointing more towards like soul type realm and things like that, and what effects that they can have on us. So a high place, if you're not familiar with what it is, it's two different references as far as biblical practices go. One, sometimes it is referred to as like one-on-one time with God, like as Moses went to the high place and had his one-on-one. But the other references in biblical terms is also like places of pagan worship and pagan gods, and where a lot of witchcraft came out of. And that's more what we're going to be focusing. So when I speak of high places today, I'm going to be speaking about those dark, deep, places that are witchcraft. And when it comes to our lives, high places more refer to undealt with hurts and feelings and things that we have in our lives, like maybe like some secret sin we haven't told anyone, or maybe it's a hurt from childhood, or things like that we just like unresolved issues that we never got to. And then so when I speak of high places, as far as spiritual places, that's what I'm going to be referring to. It's just like hurts and things that we might have gone through over our lives. And of course, I'm going to be focusing it on soul ties. And basically, a soul tie is something you have with every single person in your life. I mean, you have some sort of soul tie to it, and they have some sort of draw to you, whether good or bad. And we're going to be addressing, obviously, the bad soul ties and how to make sure to try to avoid them and keep them clean, because they have a lot of deep roots. And a lot of times we don't realize that how strong a soul tie can be. I mean, and if it's not a soul tie that's knit in God, then it's probably a soul tie that you need to address and probably sever. Because when we give these soul ties over to people and even things sometimes, so I'll show an example here of that as well. Soul ties have access more than just our physical body, but they literally have access to our mind, emotions, and feelings. And we have to make sure that we be careful that we don't allow that to, lead into our lives, because you'll see here in a little bit how it can affect us in multiple ways. Let's actually get some water. And we see the effects of these soul ties a lot of times, like usually just when people get around us. A lot of times when you have soul ties with people, just that person being around you makes you feel different. Whether it be a good or a bad reason. Like, when I get around Pastor Sonia, I immediately get like happy and into the spirit, and it's usually always around God focused. But I've had a lot of friends in my past. When I used to get around them, I would curse more. I would, drink more. I would do more, sinful things because I had a negative soul tie with them. And it wasn't until I got right and severed a lot of those lines that I kept having this back and forth relationship with God, where I'd be in and out of it. And of course, there's like three things I kind of want to focus on that by not dealing with high places, it can lead to three different things. And the first one is generational curses. And that's kind of what we're going to be dealing here with the story of Asa here. Because as you can see, even though he did what was right, he even severed that soul tie with his mom, put her out of her place. He didn't address the hurt. And when we look at this thing, it's almost as if like being in a toxic relationship, or just a bad relationship in general, whether it be physical, romantic, or just a friendship. I'm sure we've all had those relationships that it was just so toxic and just so draining on us that when you finally get out of it, I'm like, oh cool, I finally got rid of it. You know what I mean? Like I've addressed it, the situation's all better, I'm good to go now, I won't fall into that temptation again. However, you probably tend to find yourself in relationship after relationship with that exact same issue. And it's because you're not dealing with the high place in your heart, and whether it be a hurt from childhood, a hurt from your parents or brother or whatever it may be from. If you don't deal with that, you're going to keep getting drawn to those same toxic traits that you find yourself attracted to in the first place. And as we see with this people, Israel, like I said, Asa did such a great job, and he didn't even fall to the idols, because he did put them away, and he was in right standing. But you're going to see here in a little bit, it doesn't always affect just your generation. By kept sin in your heart or your life, it may even travel down to your kids and even your grandkids in generations to come. Like I said, so Asa here, he did a really good job. He got rid of all of it, but he kept the high places. He didn't tear it down. And I'd like to jump down to his son's reign, which is going to his son was Jehoshaphat, and he's going to be over in 1 Kings 22, verses 41 to 43. All right, so in verse 41, it goes, And Jehoshaphat, as the son of Asa, began to reign over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. Now Jehoshaphat was 30 and 5 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 20 and 5 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. And he walked in the ways of Asa his father. He turned not aside from it, doing that which was right in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away, for the people offered in their burnt incense yet in the high places. So you see here, even though Jehoshaphat was the son of Asa, he followed in the exact same path where he followed the things that was right with God. He himself had right standing and did a lot of great things for God. I mean, he was one of the greater kings of Judah as well. And like I said, he did what was right in the Lord, but at the same time, he also still did not address the high places that were set up. And it even says here how Israel even started going back to those high places and worshiping those idols, still allowing that witchcraft to be in the land. And that's something that, like I said, if you don't deal with it, it will always find a way to creep up, whether it be in your life or the next. And then, like I said, lastly, we're going to look at Jehoram, which is actually Jehoshaphat's son. And what I want to read in his story is going to be 2 Chronicles 21, and it's going to be verses 4 through 15. So him, I would actually want to look at his actions because it shows a little bit more depth of his story. 2 Chronicles 21. That's verses 4 through 15. Verse 4. Now, when Jehoram was risen up as the kingdom of his fathers, he strengthened himself and slew all of his brothers with the sword and divers of all the other princes of Israel. Jehoram was 30 and 2 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked the ways of the kings of Israel, like did the house of Ahab, and for he had actually married the daughter of Ahab to wife. And he wrought that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord. Howbeit the Lord would not destroy the house of David, because of the covenant that he had promised with David, and he has promised to give life to him and none of his sons forever. In his days the Edomites revolted from under his dominion, and of Judah, and made themselves kings. And then Jehoram went forth with all the princes and all the chariots with him, and rose up by night and smote the Edomites in the compass in him which accompanied the chariots. Okay, we can just stop there because I did not need to actually read the story. But you see here how Jehoram immediately was affected by those high places that were in from his grandfather's time. And actually, these high places were actually even erected by King Solomon himself, which was one of the greatest kings of Israel. But as his later days, he ended up falling into witchcraft. So that's how these high places even started. So you can even tell how it just affects generation to generation. And even though you had two back-to-back kings that were really good and did a lot of right in God, and you may be a godly person yourself, but if you're not addressing these things, they can easily seep down to the cracks into your kids. And you can just see right here, right off the bat, that he was paranoid of his position as king. I mean, he immediately killed his brothers and he killed all the other princes of Israel, which is crazy because the reason why he was king in the first place, and the reason why God just didn't kill him off right away, was because of how it mentions the covenant with David. So basically, God promised David that Jesus was going to come in the line of David. So he had to protect the holy line of David. So that's why Jehoram was even king in the first place. So his birthright was already attained. There was no coming against it. There was going to be able to usurp it anyways because he had God behind him. But yeah, he let paranoia creep in. He married literally a wife who was a daughter of Ahab. And if you don't know anything about King Ahab, he was one of the worst, most wicked kings of Israel has ever had. I mean, his wife is literally Jezebel, which I'm sure have all heard stories of her. And we can only imagine that this wife of his not only was a daughter of Ahab, was most likely a daughter of Jezebel. Like the Bible doesn't confirm it, but you would only imagine because it doesn't really list Ahab's other wives. So you can imagine this is probably a daughter of Jezebel who was also into that witchcraft and Baal worship and Asherah and everything. And you can just tell how he soul tied to it. He literally bound his whole life to it, and then she had that great effect on him. And it just, you can tell how it pours into it. Because when you get into that riotous living, like you tend to spiral. Like when you start, paranoia sets in, depression sets in, anger sets in. Like all these negative effects tend to spiral down into you when you get into these places. And if you don't really try to help clean them out, it can easily take you all the way down. I mean, you can even imagine, like in this type of sense, like I'm sure we all know some sort of pastor's kid or missionary's kid who was just the exact opposite, and it was probably due to most likely high places that were never addressed in the family setting, and it seeped down into the kids, and the kids fell prey to it because of the different soul ties that they might have set up in their lives. And this just goes to show you that when you don't trust God in your situation, you tend to try to handle it yourself. Jehoram had the birthright of God. He had the kingdom. He had the holy line, and yet he didn't trust God. He took it into his own hand. He decided to take off all his own enemies by his own doings, and then he fell into riotous living. And that's usually what happens, especially when you listen to other people's opinions or outside sources, and you try to listen to like their advice. Because if it's not godly advice, it's most likely a relationship that needs to be addressed and be healed. And at the end of the day, we have to remember too, like when we cut these people alive, because I know a lot of people, that's why they have issues cutting people out of their lives. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to be mean, or, I love that person, or, you know what I mean? Like, these soul ties are hard to break for a reason. They're attached to our souls. I mean, they dig in deep into our hearts, into our, lowest parts of where we abide and who we really are. And that's why it's so hard to cut them through. But the thing is, with God, when you make these cuts and you break these ties and stuff, it isn't just like God's going to just leave you all alone or, without anyone. 9 out of 10, if you get out of that toxic relationship, if that man or woman was supposed to be of God, God's going to clean them up and bring them back around, and it's going to be done in the right way. Or if you're already married, obviously you'd have to go, together. Maybe you get cleaned up in this sense. I think when we first started dating, we were not in this holier than thou relationship. Like we were very in a lot of our own sins that we had to get cleaned up and come together in God. But when you make these breaks, God will either replace that relationship with someone new, or He's going to either clean that person up and bring them full circle back around to you. And so that's why we have to just trust in Him. Because like I said, at the end of the day, God's got everything in His hands. I mean, He's kind of half there. Just because, you don't see it now and you're going through the thick of it doesn't mean it's not going to be there. And we just have to live in more trust. And it's going to bring us to our next thing that high places affect in our lives, and that is the loss of vision. And that's exactly what happens when we don't trust God. We try to lose sight of our vision. We stop looking in the spiritual. We start looking in the natural and making our own decisions and our own head knowledge. And I'm going to highlight this with the story of Lot. So Lot's story is going to, what I want to highlight is going to be Genesis 13, and it's going to be verses 10 through 13. Old Testament. Yeah, for whatever reason, God has me going back reading all the Old Testament right now, so it's been real fun. Yeah. I haven't quite got to Chronicles and all the names and stuff yet, so far I'm doing really good, but I'm getting there. So it's going to be, Genesis 13, 10 through 13. So it goes, it's basically the setup of this is Lot and Abraham, or Abram at this time, because he didn't have his name changed. Basically, we're traveling together. They come to the land, I believe it's right out of Bethel, and God's given them this whole big land, but their farm animals, their livestock, their servants, things like that, they were too great to hold both of them. So they decided to split the land in half. So Abram went one side, Lot went one side. Abram was like, hey, I'll let you choose. You can pick whatever side you want. And so it says, And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plains of Jordan, and that was all well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even in the gardens of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest out of Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plains of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities and the plains, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. And so basically what we see here is Lot didn't pray about it. He didn't look in the spirit. He literally just looked, oh wow, that looks like a beautiful land, rivers flowing everywhere. Even refers to it, it reminded him of the Garden of Eden. You know what I mean? Like it was plentiful and probably all the bounties. So, and who knows? It doesn't describe what Abram's lot looked like, but I'm sure it just probably wasn't as pretty. You know what I mean? But it even says here that he looked at Sodom, and it mentions here, right here, that Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. So he knew of Sodom. Everyone had already known the reputation of Sodom, and yet he still chose the lot that had Sodom in it. And even then, even at that point, he even says that he pointed his tent towards Sodom. And the funny thing is, if you read the rest of the chapter, I believe it's this chapter, the very next story of Lot, he's in the city. So no longer did he just pitch his tent outside the city or be near the city. He literally, in the very next story that it mentions Lot, he is in the city. And he actually gets in a bunch of warfare because the city ends up getting taken over and Abraham has to go save him. So it literally shows you that it sneaks in seductively. Like you might not go right to Sodom. You might be right outside Sodom. You might pitch your tent towards Sodom. I doubt he moved his tent one day to Sodom. He probably got closer and closer because he didn't deal with that high place of what Sodom stood for, and the sin and the righteous living. And we just see that how it is very deceptive. Satan loves to use pride as oh, you can handle the temptation. Don't worry, you can get close to the fire. You won't get burned yet. And he just loves to try to eat at it, and especially he makes it always dress up real pretty. It literally looked like the Garden of Eden. But that's why we have to use our spiritual eyes in everything we do, because we won't really know what it truly looks like until we ask God to reveal it to us. And then we can also tell from all the evidence that we have of Lot, it's not like he was living in Sodom and not sinning. I mean, he obviously was probably, from the stories of his daughters after they leave the city and the story of his wife, we obviously know that he most likely was a part of the Sodom and in their lifestyle, and probably chose to sin with it as well. And that's what a lot of times it does. We say we can resist the temptation, it won't affect us, but then yet we start drinking more, we start cursing a little bit more, we start, doing things. And this is a soul tie that leads no person. He literally had a soul tie to the land. It's to the lifestyle he was living, or the lifestyle he was wanting to have and try to keep up going, instead of just actually addressing what God wanted him, what life God wanted him to live, what God, what actions he was supposed to be doing, or what lifestyle he was supposed to be portraying and trying to attack himself to. Because things like this can attach so easily, and it can come into anything. This is anytime we put anything above God or focus above God. For me personally, it was video games. I spent my entire life playing video games, ungodly amount of time. You can look at hours logged in games where I've had 1,000 hours logged into a game, not hundreds, but thousands of hours. And even when me and Eileen first got together, that was one of the big things I always told her. I'm hey, I'm gonna play video games. I'm probably always gonna play video games. It's how I de-stress myself, and that was how I try to justify it to myself. No, it de-stresses me. It's how I kind of get my my jitters out, even though it was a complete lie. Because when I was playing video games, I'd get more angry, more stressed out than I was when I first started playing because I lost or something like that. Yeah, so it led to more riotous living. Half the times I'd be arguing with 12-year-olds. This is what you do. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until I really started getting close to God where God had to address it upfull. And yes, I still play video games. He still allows me. He had me get rid of most of my games, because when I would play these video games, it would lead into other stuff. And that's what I was trying to say. A lot of times with sin, it's just a little bit at first, and then you get more and more, and they tend to spiral down further and further. So I would play video games, and then I would get angry, I get frustrated. So then what? Well, how do I get happy right away? And then it would probably lead. Maybe I'd start watching porn, or I would do something else, drink, or go do go out to places I shouldn't have been at. And that's how a lot of my my sins tend to compound on each other. And it was because I didn't address my issue with video games that all these other things were attaching itself to. And that's a lot of times what sin does. And when we put things above God, or we put these idols in our lives, that they tend to attach to other feelings and other things in our lives. And that's what soul ties do. They literally will drag us down. And they love to spiral. The Satan loves to just kick you while you're down and just keep adding as you spiral all the way down.
That's right.
Yeah. And again, a lot of times, like I said, the act of playing video games, like I said, I still have video games. It isn't sin itself, but it's when you don't have it aligned in God and God's will that it becomes sin. Like, I don't think Lot chose this land purposely to go to Sodom. I don't think he desired to be in Sodom. I think he legit said, hey, wow, this is a beautiful land. I don't have to do much work to make it beautiful. I'm going to just go here because it's easy. You know what I mean? A lot of times it can even be the easier route with a lot of things. And that's why you got to pray about everything. So just because the opportunity arises and it's beautiful, it does not mean it's of God. And that's what Lot found himself in. And, you know, it was a lifestyle he wanted. It was a lane he desired. And it was just what it was an easier way for him to go into. And that's why it tends to, like I said, just spirals out. And then I want to flip to like the end of his story, because I want to show how this lifestyle can spiral even further out of control. We're going to jump to Genesis 19, verses 13 through 26. And this is the story probably everyone knows. All right. So Genesis 19, 13 through 26. And basically, this is when God sent two messengers into Lot to tell him he needs to flee the city because he's about to destroy it. So he goes, this is Lot telling his family. So he said, for we will destroy this place because they cry among the waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out, and he spake unto his son-in-laws, which were married to his daughters, and said, up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he seemed to be as one that had mocked unto the sons of the law. Basically, meaning it seemed like he was joking about the matter. He wasn't being serious that God was really going to destroy it. So apparently they misunderstood him. And it goes, and when the morning arose, and the angels hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife and 2 daughters, which are here, and lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. He goes even say he got a warning. Literally tried to tell his family, they didn't take him serious. And then he still didn't get out that night. He waited till the morning, and then the angels had to hurry him up. So he wasn't even in a hurry in the morning. And it's like when destruction's coming, he still cannot release from this soul tie because it was a lifestyle he was accustomed to. And he goes, and while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hands and upon the hands of his wife and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, and the Lord merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass that when they had brought forth abroad, then they said, escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in the plain or escape the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, oh, not so, my Lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in the sight of thou, hast magnified thy mercy, in which thou hast shown unto me, saving my life. And I cannot escape into the mountains, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold, now the city is near to flee unto it, and is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither, and not the little one, and my soul shall live. And even then, he still gets clear direction of where to go for safety, and he'd rather just take the shortcut to a small little town. And it's just like, and that's what it does. Like it's so hard to get rid of these ties because they get so deep into them that it's almost like a countercultural shock to yourself because you have to just break all those deep ties to them. And it's so much I'll just take a pit stop here. I don't have to get rid of all of it, just some of it. And it's like we really have to take a hold of what these actually can do to us. And he goes and he says unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also. I will not overthrow the city for the next which I had spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything until thou come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth, and when Lot entered into Zoar, then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone of fire from the Lord of heavens. And he overthrew these cities, and all the plains, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And we see here basically what happens when you don't get rid of these old habits, when you can't just break from that lifestyle, when you feel like you just can't let go, you can't be without it, like that thing makes you. This woman was so obsessed with her lifestyle, her money, whatever you could tie this to, and she refused to let it go. She couldn't live without it. She couldn't not look back, and it eventually ended up costing her entire life. You know, and then it just wrecked her whole family after that. Because Lot did not have a great ending either. And like I said, she didn't deal with the high places. She didn't want to lose her lifestyle. She didn't want to lose her way. And when you don't deal with your lifestyles or the high places will eventually deal with you. And there's like one other thing, or one other story I'd love to go into as well. And it's gonna be the third option, or the third category of things that high places can lead to, and it can lead to death. And the story I'd love to highlight here is the story of Samson.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for Samson, we're going to be looking at Judges chapter 16. Yeah, everyone knows the story too. So, this is the relationship soul tie. So we Judges 16, we're probably reading verses 1 through 22. We might read to the end. Okay, and it says, then went Samson to Gaza, and he saw there a harlot and went in unto her. And it was told to the Gazalites, saying, Samson is come hither. And they compassed him, and they laid wait for him at night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, in the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson laid midnight and arose to midnight, and took the doors off the gate of the city, and the two posts, and went away with them bars and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried them all the way to the top of the hill that was before Hebron. And it came to pass afterwards that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came unto her and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means may we prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and that we will give ye every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherein thou mightest be bound of affliction. And Samson said unto her, if thou bind me with 7 green withs that were never dried, then it shall be weak and be as another man. Then the Lord of the Philistines brought unto her 7 green withs which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now when the men were lying in wait, abiding with her in the chambers, and he said unto them, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he broke the withs and threads his toe, and broken it from toucheth the fire, and so the strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me, and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherein thou might be bound. I mean, he probably knows what. Yeah, I doubt Samson was ignorant to the fact that Delilah was obviously selling him out to the situation. And it's funny because we're going to read it, and we're going to read more and more. It's like, I think it's almost 4 different times the exact same text on him. And it just goes, I'll go to show you what is at play here in a minute, but it just goes to show you how the devil likes to work. And he said unto her, and they bind me fast with new ropes that were never occupied. Then I shall be weak as any other man. Delilah therefore took new ropes, bound him wherein, and said unto the Philistines to be upon thee. Samson and there were liars in waiting to bait in the chambers, and he brake them from off his arms like threads. Delilah said unto him, hereunto thou hast mocked me, and thou tell me lies. And tell me wherewith thou mightest bound, and I have and said unto her, if thou weavest 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with the pin, and said unto him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he wakened out of his sleep, and he went with the pin and the beams in the web. And she said unto him, how can thou sayest, I love thee, when thy heart is not with me? Thou hast mocked me 3 times, and hast told me where thy great strength lieth. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with his words, and urged him, that his soul was so vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart, and said unto her, there had not come a razor upon my head, and now I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. And if I be shaven, then the strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her out of all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, for he hath shown me his heart. And the Lord of the Philistines came in unto her and brought money in their hands. And she had made him sleep upon her knees, and he called for a man and caused him to shave off 7 locks of his head, and began to afflict him with the strength went from him. And she said, The Philistines will be upon thee, Samson. And he woke out of his sleep. I will go out as other times before, and shake myself, and wist not the Lord was departed from him. But the Philistines took him, put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza, and bound him with fetters and brass, and he did not grind in the prison house. Howbeit the hair of his head, and the rest of we can stop there. And obviously we know that the rest of the chapter, he eventually grows his hair back out, and he does at least get his revenge on these people, but it eventually causes him to die. And that's what, like, if you notice, I mean, obviously I'm sure he knew exactly what Delilah was doing. I mean, I doubt you fall for the same trap 4 different times and not realize the situation of it. But it's what I mentioned before, that pride. It's so strong, and it's so like, oh, I can handle that temptation. I know the situation. I know how much I can do, how far out I can go, and it's the number one trick the devil loves to use. He loves to try to make you think you can handle it, and you can't. And then obviously he had some issues with flesh as well. And literally the story starts with him going into a harlot's house. So not only did he have struggles with flesh and lust, he also backed it with pride. And we do it all the time. We know we struggle with something, and we leave that door just cracked because no, I can do it. You know, it won't bother me. You know what I mean? But yet then it comes. And then, like I said, with him, he loved her obviously, because otherwise he would have never told her secret. And that's what eventually got him to break and tell his secret in the first place. She's like, how can you say you love me and make a fool of me? And it goes to show you that when you get in these relationships, whether it be a friend or an actual relationship, these ties, they have effects on you. They have pulls on you. They can make you do things that you would never do. Like, what's funny is we sit here and we laugh at Samson and it's like, well, how could you not seen it coming? But we've all been in those exact same relationships where we're like, I hate this trait of this person, but yeah, I'm gonna stay with this person even though he keeps doing the same thing over and over again. And you know what I mean? It's just like it goes to show you the power that these ties have, and like how much it can blind you even when you're in the whole situation. And like I said, I'm sure we've all been in a scenario like Samson has. And like I said, I love Proverbs 16:18 just like sums up pride in a perfect way. It goes, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Like, it doesn't say pride goes before you might stumble or before you might get a little outy. No, it says pride goes before destruction. And we see here, like, it eventually destroyed Samson's whole life. And even if we look at all the examples prior to them, even with the kings, like King Asa and King Jehoshaphat, when they served God, they all had long, healthy reigns. They were all 30, 40-year reigns. Jehoram, the one who fell into witchcraft, had 8 years. He literally was king for 8 years and was killed off. He didn't have a very long reign. Even with the story of Lot's wife, I mean, she wasn't old. She was probably in her prime. I mean, they were probably still of age, and she literally turned into a pillar of salt, and it cost her her life. And the same thing with Samson. Samson was a young man. Samson was, I believe, only like 30 or something in the story time, and he died young. And that's what these soul ties do, and it's what happens with that unrepentant sin and that hidden sin in our hearts. And like I said, it can be anything. Like, there's a lot of pains, there's a lot of things that we just take daily. But I personally know someone who literally is almost 30 now, and he blames his life on because he had a bad stepfather. And it's just like, okay, well, like, you moved out when you're 18, you're almost 30 now. That's 12 years of you. Like, you're miserable because of you. Like, it's what a lot of us do. We love to play the victim. We love to try to play, oh, it's someone else's fault, or it's something else that's affecting us, when in reality, we haven't taken stock of our own life. We haven't looked at our own, what's causing our issues. And like me personally, I had a big issue with doubt and unbelief for years. I mean, you can ask Eileen, like even up to just a couple of years ago, and I never understood where it stemmed from. And it wasn't until I got in front of God's presence and asked Him to show me why do I keep struggling with this. And He literally showed me a vision when I was in high school, and something that had happened to me, and a hurt that I had to like kind of address and kind of walk through. because it was wrecking my foundation of my faith. And it was because, you know, I grew up in Christianity, you know what I mean? And I never thought anything could go wrong. And when something finally went wrong, it caused my whole life to spiral. And I buried it with alcohol and partying and bad friends and, you know, just all sorts of riotous living as well. Like, it wasn't until years later I finally started getting back right on God and, you know, even got, you know, married and everything. Yeah.
What happened?
Different message. That's a different
Okay,
message.
we'll talk later.
Yeah, different message. You know what I mean?
You wanna get up there and preach?
But yeah, and the thing is, like, especially with these soul ties, they're so important to address. And the easiest thing is always just try to look at it. If that soul tie is not knitted into Jesus, if it's not bringing you to Jesus or bringing you more and closer to God, then it's probably a soul tie that needs to be addressed. It probably needs to be cut out, whether it be a person, a relationship, an idol like a video game or TV or whatever you may put above your time with God. It needs to most likely be addressed because it's most likely causing you to spiral downward. And like I said, when they're not addressed, they're going to attach things to it because Satan loves to just compile, because that's how he overwhelms you. He can't overwhelm you alone because with God, obviously, we can overwhelm, but he needs to tear you down, and so he'll use the people around you, whether it be, you know, like King Asa had put out his own mom, like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of times it can be close family members, sons, kids, things like that. Like, we just assume that, oh God, it's not in the wrong. And it's not to say that you're never going to see that person or talk to that person again. You know what I mean? As I mentioned before, God has a funny way of a lot of times, bringing that person back 360 and back into your life, but in right standing. You know what I mean? Or you might just send someone completely new that will just take in that hole or that gap you might feel. Because cleaning out soul ties is one of the hardest things you'll probably ever do. It hurts. It digs deep. It's part of your inner self. Like, it is a part of you. I know I had to got my attention. I had to cut off almost all my friends at the time. I was out there drinking. I was partying. I wasn't doing the things of the Lord. And I had tried many times to come back in. I mean, there's always the running joke that I used to come just for my birthday. And I don't know why. It just always seemed to be around my birthday when I would try to get my life cleaned back up towards God. And I would come back to Soldiers. I'd be here for about a month, maybe 2 months. But I wasn't cutting off those friendships and those ties that I had. So as soon as I would leave, the next day I'd be partying, or I'd be, you know, playing video games or cursing or just doing whatever I was doing in those ages. And it's because, like I said, I wasn't addressing those high places in my life. I wasn't addressing the hurts and the pains. And I wasn't addressing I was just attaching myself to all these other, like, soul ties, to all these other people that I had no business to be part of my inner self. And that's what happened. Then I had to eventually just clean break it. I mean, I literally had to walk away from almost all of them. And it hurt. I mean, it still hurts. Like, I still have a buddy of mine I pray for almost daily who I loved, and I literally hung out with this kid almost every single day for like 4 or 5 years straight. And my heart goes out to him. I pray for him daily that hopefully he can get some attention. I mean, luckily, God, and the funny thing is, coming back into God, and cleaning up my life and breaking a lot of those soul ties, God did bring a lot of those people back. I mean, Sonia's son-in-law, Devin, was one of those people I pray for daily, and he's sitting here, he can talk about God, he loves God, he prays daily. He's got a beautiful baby boy that he's trying to preach God over. Like, he's doing amazing, and I would never have seen it, like, you know, I would never have guessed it would have happened. You know, both my best friends were also in the same light, you know, they've also come back 360. So God has a way of restoring those people. And you might be like, oh, well, I might lose them, but you might, but at the same time, you might not. It might bring them back. I mean, it's amazing what those people can do when they are knitted in God, when you actually reestablish that soul tie properly in Jesus. And like I said, but that is the end of the message. All I had today.
Good job.
Thank you. I'd love to pray out just so we can go on our way. I think I do. I think I might need 20 minutes. Do I have 20 minutes? I got close. Okay. So I won't mind. But yeah.
I have a request. There's a guy at work who passed away, and he's a young guy, so just for his family.
Except for the herbs.
It's just Jeremy.
All right, we'll do Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here today, Lord. I just pray you just be with each and every one of us, Lord. You know the trials and stuff we're going through, Lord. As the prayer request mentioned here, Lord, the young man Jeremy passing away, Lord. You know what his family's going through, the hole that's left there in that void, Lord. And these are the moments where the devil will look for to try to take advantage, Lord. We just pray your protection over it, Lord, that your Holy Spirit come into that household, Lord, and establish a life unto you, Lord, and that you be able to fill those gaps and those voids, Lord. And we just pray your hand of protection over them, Lord. We also lift up again Miss King's family, Lord, that you put your hand of healing upon them, Lord, and that they would all be fully restored unto you, Lord, and just be able to overcome the flu and the pink eye that's going around, Lord. And we just pray that you just be with each and everyone that is here, Lord, that we will take a value of an assessment of our lives, Lord, that we would be able to address the soul ties and be able to find those deep hidden sparks that we didn't even know about, Lord. And when we go before you today and just pray that you reveal those parts of our lives unto us, Lord, that we be able to address them and be able to overcome and just go through the healing that's required, Lord. We just pray that you be over each and every one of us. Keep your hand upon us, Lord. I pray in your blessed and holy name, Lord. Amen. Bye, online community. Hope you guys have a blessed day.